just going to type in a basic message, server failed. Right, so that's just a basic fail. Now what these two things do is just end the server. So again, this we don't actually need to call the whole server shutdown thing here, as nothing's actually really happened yet, and we only need to free the DLL and then end the program. So yeah, that's that there. So the next thing we're gonna do is, now we're gonna make sure the server is definitely on now. So we're just gonna output a message saying server listening, or server initialized on port. Oh god, I cannot code today. Anyway, that should be a small s as well. So yeah, now that should all be in order. So this is the part where we check for new connections. Now this is where we'll have a little while statement going. Now this will just constantly loop. So yeah, what we want to do is we'll just whack a sleep in here, as we don't want this to overload, because that would not be good. If you don't put a sleep in there, it won't break, it will just max out your CPU usage and use all free resources to its advantage. If you whack in a sleep, it will only do this cycle more than 1,000 times a second, which isn't that much on a computer. So this should run fine on any system, and you don't really need to make any faster than 1,000 cycles per second, because it's not really worthwhile. So the next step we're going to do is check if we've got a new connection. Now we can do this by doing this double, say new client for example. This is just the temporary variable to hold the new client. TCP accept. Now this will get fired off any time when a new connection gets fired. Now socket ID is listen sock, and mode is 1, which is non-blocking, and again we want to set the naggable, or naggable, it sounds like kind of eagle, it sounds, no, it sounds like, well, no, nagging, whatever, I don't know, but yeah, you want to set that's true. Now the next step is to check if the socket that's been opened up is set, and if it's larger than 0 then it will be set. If it's 0 then you've got a problem and nothing's really happened. So now we want to, the first thing we need to do is check whether the server's full. So the first thing we need to do is tell the player how many people are already connected. So we can do this by cycling through the script. Now what we're going to do is, this is just going to cycle through the players. Now this is just a for statement to cycle through the players, and pretty simple. It's just going to check whether the player's being used or not. Now we set up that variable called in use, and what that will allow is when a player is in use, then this variable will set to true. So what we're going to do is just check if the player is not in use, and you should check them not by putting a little exclamation mark in front of it. So that will check if the player is not in use, and if the player is not in use, then we're free to use it. So what we can do is we can do new connection as such. That's just because someone's connected. What we can also do is set this to being in use, as we don't want another person jumping in onto the same player class, because that would not be very good. So also we just need to set this guy's socket. I can't remember what variable I used. That would be why. So we want to set a socket. This is just a socket that the player is on, and we want to set that to a new client, just as such. Now we will get on to sending currently connected players to other players in a bit, and so on. But the first thing we're going to do is just output what the IP of the person who connected is. Actually no, okay, let's just say they're connecting because they're not 100% in just yet. Now this little function here just tells you the IP of the socket, which is open, so we can use that to easily find out the IP of the person who's connected, and so on. Now, now that we've done that, that should all work fine, I guess. Oops. Okay, so now that's all done, and remove bracket. That will check and help a player connect. So yeah, now the next thing we want to do is we just want to get the player's name. So here we go. This is what we want to do now. We want to read the listening socket to make sure that a player is connected. So in this situation, we will just cycle through all the players and read their socket. So I'm just going to copy this from up here. You'll be using this bit a lot because it's quite a common construction in the server. Now, if the player is in use, rather we want to change that to is in use, then we will read their socket. Now, this also will be in a while statement, as we can. Again, you will want to sleep 1 so you don't overload the server. And again, as we haven't actually initialized the thread yet, so what we want to do here is just create the thread. So, whoops. Sorry for my server, I can't even remember what I called it. Check for connections. And right, that's all you need to do for that to create the player listen thread. So now what we're going to do is just cycle through all the players and get that message received. Now in this, because here we used like 1 here, what we can do with the server is we can use a switch statement to read the packet ID and then apply it to the correct case based on its ID. So well, the first thing we need to do is we need to check if the players actually got a message. And we can do that by simply typing double size. We use a double because a size can be minuscule. It's not necessarily going to be larger than 1. And there's this function called receive message. And because we're on cycling through all these players, you can just do players I, which is going to get the current player dot sock. Now the sock represents the socket once again, and these aren't really important. Those are just like limitation variables, and if you want to use multiple buffers and so on. So what we have here is we can check if the size is larger than 0. Now if the size is larger than 0, then we've received a packet. Enough said. And I'm just going to close all that off. So this is the main thing here. If size is larger than 0, then we've got a packet and we can read it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create a basic little variable, which is just int packet ID, packet header ID, for example, equals. I'm just going to make sure that gets cast to int. So that's the first thing we want to do, and that will get the ID. That will get this number. Whatever number's in here will appear in this variable. So if I set this to 200, this variable would become 200, and so on, which allows us to simply whack that number in a switch statement and go from there. So what we've got here, switch packet header ID, case 1. Now because we've got that number 1 in here, this is the same as doing if packet header ID, that's the same as doing that, just case. So what we're going to do here is if case is 1, then great, we've received the packet. Now this part is a little bit more awkward because again, like I was explaining earlier, you need to convert a string to make it work with the C++ stuff, which is a little bit annoying, but it's not too bad. So the first thing we need to do is just get the string. So string str equals read string 0. Right, so that's the first bit. Now, actually, we don't even need to convert it in this particular situation, but in future situations we will. Okay, so this is just a basic little testing, and we've only got this all set up, so this is the only packet we have from the player so far. So what we can do now is we can happily run this server and oh, build errors. If size larger than 0. Ooh, what have I got? Oh, right, yeah. Sorry, my bad. Just typing a variable wrong. And we've got another area. Oh, what have we got here? I can't even see where that error is throwing. Oh, that's not a problem. Unreferenced variables aren't a problem. Okay, so we've got a missing closed bracket somewhere. Oops. Checking sure I've got the right number of brackets. Yeah, that's fine. Aha! We've got one missing on here. Oh, right, yes. Forgot to close the switch statement. Boom. Problem potentially solved. There we go. Now I've got annoying avast, so that's why that pops up. So now we have our server running, and this message will pop up when you run a server for the first time. It pretty much does that with everything. So now what we can do is we can go into Game Maker and we can test this out. So I'm just going to run our little game. Now we're going to connect to this because this is localhost, and enter username player. Ah. Whoops. Okay, so that worked, but we have a problem. And that was because in this version of the file I had a variable set which wasn't isn't supposed to be in there. So I'm just going to take that out for now, and there's another one in here. Don't worry, your version won't have this in, so you won't actually have this problem. So don't worry. Okay, let's try that again, and I'm going to close the server because that time that messed up, and that was Game Maker's fault. Oh, and the other thing we actually do need to do, I just realised, is that wouldn't have actually happened if we hadn't put a break in here. Now what we need to do is we need to just slap a break in here to stop it saying all 12 players to that. And also what we want to do is if there's no free space around there, okay, so what we want to do here is just make sure the server's not full. So what we want to do is just have a variable set equals 0. This means that you're not the set, and I'm just going to set the set to 1 here. Not set, then this will just stop a player from being joining if the server's full. What you'd want to do in a proper thing is send a packet back to the client telling it the server's full, so that it doesn't attempt to keep on connecting. So just launch the server one more time. And join. Okay, that should have sent the packet. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this because I have a feeling that it's not sending. It's sending the packet straight away. So we won't do anything there. we'll wait for the client to receive a packet before it sends one out. So what we want to do here is while true. This is similar. This is the same thing as the other server. Now this is just going to be a packet scanner again. So if size is more or equal to 0, then just exit. And now we're just going to do packet ID equals read byte. Again, this is just exactly the same as in the server as I did a minute ago, so I won't spend too long on this. Now again, we're going to wait for a packet to receive from the server. So we're just going to we need to get the server to send the ID of the player to the player, and what this here will do is let the player know what his ID is. So we're going to set the variable global.myID equals read byte. Now that will tell the player what his ID is in relation to the server, and that can be used for future calls and sending other data forward as well. It's not 100% essential in a TCP only setup, but it is definitely useful, and especially useful for when you have multiple players. So what I'm going to do that is when he receives his connection, we're just going to get it to send the message, which I've actually just got rid of because I'm a numpty. So again, we're just going to create the little thing to send back to the server, telling the server your username. I can't even type. Okay. So that's all done there, and that should run spiffingly. If you want to initialize global.myID so it doesn't throw an error. And again, just open up this and see what we have here. So case 1, str equals read string, blah. That should work fine. Although what we need to add now is that when the player connects, we also need to add a variable to here to let the player know their ID, and just in case we ever need it in the future. I mean, we can just get the ID through cycling through here, and that's just as simply as setting it to I in here. So what we need to do now is clear the buffer. Again, this is the same thing. Now in C++ you need to write down all your arguments, so you need to put a 0 in here, otherwise it will give you an error. Now again, we just write byte 1 is the ID of what we're going to be sending, because that matches up with the 1 in the step event here. That's the 1 here, so that matches up. That's just the important thing there. Now we're just going to write one more byte to this packet, the byte being the ID, and again we need to put a 0 there, otherwise it will throw an error. Now we can just send this message to the this time when you're sending from the server, you send them to the player socket. So in this case, players I.sock, or you could type new client in there, but for clarity I'm just going to be doing that. And then for those, because they're just being sent back to a client, you can just set all those arguments to like unset, or whatever you want to call it, null. And now that should send the player's ID to the client. Now, just to be sure, I'm just going to get this to throw a message saying player's ID. This is all debugged, so it's not actually going to be in here. It's just a testing thing. So what we're going to do now is run this one more time, run that one more time, and hope that this works. Right. Okay, so I'm not 100% sure where the problem's coming from, whether it's in here or whether it's just to do with this. What I'm thinking is that I need to actually convert this string to a char, and I'm going to do that just to make sure that it's definitely going to work. So just start with C1. That doesn't even need to be anything too special. str.cstring. This is just a conversion to convert a string to a char star array. And yeah, that will convert the this variable to this variable, and then we can output this instead and hope that that works. I assume that's the problem. I've always used that before, but I'm not 100% sure whether that'll actually work or not. So we definitely know the player's connecting, and there we go. No, that didn't work. Oh, right. So that still didn't work for whatever reason. Not 100% sure why. But just give me a moment and we will hopefully unveil. Just checking I'm setting everything up here. Oh, whoops. That is why. Well, that's why it didn't work. I wasn't setting in use to true up there, unfortunately. Sorry about that. It's hard doing these off the fly. Like doing it, because often it doesn't really matter if you make a mistake, you can just fix it, but on these, oh, cannot afford to make a mistake. Okay, so now that we know that works, player has joined, and we're all very happy for him. So that's basic connections done, and I hope that you'll join me in part 2. I'm sorry that took so long to get such a little thing done, but multiplayer does take a long time to get to grips with, and again, the project files for this will be available, and this is just part 1 for getting just a basic connection and server all set up. And now in the next parts we'll start getting into actually having a game and making more out of it, getting other players in and so on. So thanks for watching and bye.